Hello, student affairs professionals of University of West Florida. Thank you very much for having us today. My name is Tom Sakine. Unfortunately, I am not here at the moment, and I'm currently in California. However, I have provided you with this video to present to you scenarios number 2 and number 3, which are contracts and negligence that the Student Affairs Task Force had to resolve before we were able to move on with the intramural extravaganza. The first scenario was contracts, and we had to describe the contract authority that we had as a task force and list several examples of the types of activities that may include signing the contracts. Also, we had to describe the elements of a contract necessary to complete a contract with the company who will provide the officials for the weekend. Now, the facts in this case were the Intramural Extravaganza Weekend Task Force is in charge of organizing and executing this event. Otherwise, we believe that the task force has been granted the authority to make several decisions about the planning and undergoing of the intramural extravaganza weekend. For example, we have the authority to decide which sporting events will occur at the weekend, who will cater the event, who will volunteer at the event, who will be eligible to participate in the event, who may sponsor the event, and who will be responsible for setting up the event structure and logistics. Contracts that may be involved including food service contracts, commitment to participate from student organizations, commitment to volunteer, and others. If we work with an external sponsor, such as a local radio station, we may need to sign a contract stating that they will help fund our event if we provide a certain level of advertising for their station. Now, the elements of a contract, for example, a legitimate contract, must consist of both an offer and an acceptance, legally sufficient consideration, and a lack of features that could negate its credibility. Therefore, should we decide to work with an external company who will provide officials for the intramural extravaganza weekend, we must sign a contract that includes all of these aforementioned elements. With serious intent, we should also communicate our offering the company financial compensation in exchange for their work at the event, which may include logistical managers, referees, medics on site, and caterers, for example. A company representative with the appropriate authority and capacity must then voluntarily and genuinely communicate the company's acceptance of our offer. Now, I said that it must be with a representative with appropriate authority and capacity. We cannot have some random Joe Blow that's coming from this company and saying that they will promise something in exchange for something else of ours, because they might not generally have the proper authority to offer what they are offering. So it must be someone that has an appropriate authority and capacity, such as a manager, for example, of the radio station. We would then be exchanging funds for their services, the ratio of one to the other being legally sufficient and therefore equivalent. Since the exchange of money for services is not illegal, and we would not be asking for the company to perform any legal issues, the legitimacy of our contract with this company would stand. Now, moving on to the third scenario that the Student Affairs Task Force had to go through was negligence. In this case, we had a wonderful, lovely student, Sally Slipfall, who shows up to the intramural extravaganza with the soccer team from Crosby University. Crosby University holds a trophy from last year, and Sally is a key player on their team. It has rained heavily through the night, and our soccer field is still wet and muddy. However, as us being Student Affairs Task Force, we decided to let the games begin anyway, and Crosby University played Pace University in the first match. During a goal-scoring move, Sally slides hard, falling flat on her back, and of course she ends up with 2 herniated discs and requires surgery. Now, in this case, we had to ask ourselves, is Nautilus University potentially liable for the accident, and also to discuss the factors that we considered in our analysis. Now, here are the facts. We had heavy rainfall left on our soccer fields, which left the field wet, mucky, slippery, and dangerous. Also, we decided to let the intramural extravaganza weekend begin anyway, and Sally Slipfall was injured and needed surgery. Let's go over the legal issues. Nautilus University was negligent because we created an unreasonable risk of harm for students participating in our intramural extravaganza. We were not judging the situation reasonably after the rain, and we did not keep in mind what was best for our students and the students from participating institutions. Since Sally was an invitee of Nautilus University, we had a duty to protect her from dangerous conditions, warn her of potential dangerous conditions, and not intentionally cause her harm. Since we failed in the first two of these features, we breached our duty, basically, to protect all university invitees. Sally's injury was caused by mucky terrain, and this resulted in this risk of injury already exists in soccer. However, that risk was dangerously enhanced due to the field conditions. Mucky terrain was the actual cause of Sally's injury. However, it was because of our negligence at Nautilus University, which was the proximate cause, since we should have foreseen and prevented this situation. Administratively, professionally, and ethically, by inviting students to participate in our intramural extravaganza, we had a duty to protect them from harm. We are not only legally responsible for our negligent behavior, but professionally and ethically. Did we do what was right for these students by allowing them to play despite dangerous field conditions? Was keeping to a predetermined schedule and avoiding inconvenience worth the enhanced risk of injury? By maintaining skewed priorities, Nautilus University was legally, administratively, and ethically negligent. Now we have a few alternative solutions, one being proactively seek settlement with Sally for injuries sustained, the other being wait for the cause to go to court, where we would argue defense, though we know we should be liable. This also has a risk of having the case going public and the public image of Nautilus University skewed or altered in one way or the other. However, we believe that the main solution would be to settle out of court, and the task force and Nautilus University accept responsibility for negligence at the intramural extravaganza. We would be able to negotiate some type of compensation that is very reasonable and meaningful with Sally Slipfall in this case. And the plan of action would be, again, we would work with legal counsel to contact Sally and pay reparations equivalent to damages sustained at the intramural extravaganza weekend and subsequent medical costs. We will therefore avoid the court fees and negative press as well as time wasted in legal proceedings. Now let's move on to scenario number 4.